Hey everybody, it's Jason here with the Content Marketing Virtual Summit, and I'm here with Vitaly Gonkov, who is the head of marketing, Semrush Content Marketplace. And so welcome to the live panel session today, Vitaly.
Hey everyone, pleasure to be here.
So really quickly, just to let everybody know, in the first 24 hours, we had over 1,000 people like and comment and share events of the summit this time. And this time we're also having in-depth discussions with people during the live panel. And you're also open to, share comments and questions through the panel and say hi and all that. So feel free to do all of that. To get started today, I think some people who are showing up for the panel may not have seen your presentation, and they might not know your role or where you're working. So I think it would be good just to say hello and maybe introduce yourself and also a bit about Semrush.
Yeah. Hey guys, my name is Vitaly Gonkov, and I'm coming from St. Petersburg, Russia. So, at this time of the year, unfortunately, it's not best time probably to visit it because it's windy, cold, rainy, but at the same time, it's a very, very beautiful city. So I come from Semrush, from Content Marketplace Business Unit. I'm head of marketing there. A couple of words about Semrush. I believe that most of you actually know this tool. It's a big tool with big ecosystem with a big number of tools for various purposes that can be used by people from digital marketing. We have tools for backlink analysis, rank tracking, SEO site audit, and many, many others. So, and basically, our mission is to help you gain digital marketing insights and help you improve your digital visibility. As for Semrush Content Marketplace, it's a new kit in this big family of Semrush tools. However, it's getting really, really popular with them. Basically, Semrush Content Marketplace is a platform that instantly matches those who are in need of content with best fit hand-picked copywriters. So with Semrush Content Marketplace, one doesn't have to, search for writers, analyze their portfolios, sign contracts with them, onboard vet, and actually manage this whole process. Semrush Content Marketplace takes this headache out of the process for you just to focus on what really matters for your business, on your business goals. So we deliver different content formats, articles, web copy, infographics, ebooks, you name it, right? We also optimize this content and completely align it with your brand voice and with the goals you have for your business or for your campaigns in particular.
So I think
that's basically, yeah.
Let me jump in really quickly. So thanks so much, first of all, for saying hi and being on the live panel today, Vitaly. So you were saying that Semrush is really houses quite a lot of different tools, and it's used by companies and by SEOs, search engine optimization consultants all around the world to do things like keyword research and do site audits to really look at even a lot of competitor information is available there. So it's a very widely used system and widely trusted. And then your role is the head of marketing for Semrush Content Marketplace. And as you shared, the Content Marketplace is a place where people can go to get their content created. And there's some advantages to doing it through Semrush, right? There's some critical things that make it really one of the places people can really go to get their writing done and their articles done, different types of content. So the first question, so Semrush is a tool that people use for lots of different aspects of content marketing. And then in the content marketplace is essentially a place to get content created. So the first question, I think we can. There's going to be some questions about the study you did, which I think people are really curious to learn more about that, because your talk was about a lot of research you did and your team did about how people are currently outsourcing content and what's working and what they measure and things like that. So we're going to talk about your presentation probably in more detail in a bit. But I think before we do that, for people who are just joining and want to learn more about the content marketplace itself, there's this first very basic question that I wanted us to get your input on. So, what are the different types of content? This is a question that somebody wanted to know. What are the different types of content that could be produced by Semrush Content Marketplace?
Yeah, as I said, we cover all popular content formats like articles, web copy, infographics, ebook, you name it, right? Also, as we have just started, in the future, we're planning to expand, our product range and probably include more content types. So if you need, for example, video script or presentations, just let us know and we will consider adding those options in the future. Uh, but for now, yeah, we mainly focus on those main 8 popular content types. I'm going to talk about a bit later, yeah, in my presentation.
Okay, great. And one of the, I think, statistics that there's a number of really amazing statistics that came up from the research that you guys put together, your team put together. So before we get into those statistics and trying to understand them and the questions around them, one of the questions that came up were around how many different people or entrepreneurs and companies did you guys actually include in your survey?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, a couple of words about our methodology and our approach to this big research, right? So, in fact, the research consisted of 2 big phases. It was qualitative research and quantitative research. So, at the first phase, we interviewed the representatives of 25 big brands, including LiveChat, GetResponse, PictoChart, and many, many others. You can actually view the whole list on our website. And the second phase, we collected all the data, analyzed it, and surveyed more than 700 of different companies. Companies with absolutely different background, coming from various industries, domains, and niches. Companies of various shapes and sizes. Yeah, it was probably a one-man company and a huge enterprise of more than 500 people. And the goal of this big research was actually to understand what's going on in the industry of content outsourcing. Yeah, we actually wanted to know what content types people actually outsource, who's outsource this content to, what matters most for them. Yeah, whether it's the briefing process or whether that is how the content is built, optimized. We actually wanted to figure out the success criteria as a measure with outsourced content, right? And of course, assessment criteria was kind of the central part of this whole research. We really wanted to understand why people consider this or that outsourced content either good or bad. So that is why with this research, we aim to cover, these topics and to answer these questions. I believe we did that. So the results are available on our website. And also you may watch my full presentation that I did yesterday here at Content Marketing Virtual Summit. I guess Jay has all the links for you.
Yeah, excellent. So 700 different businesses were surveyed, and you really covered small, big, different industries. And I think that's really helpful for people to know so that when they're listening to your talk and also when they're participating in the panel, this is sort of really insight into what's going on with content and how people are creating it, and also why they're choosing to do it in-house or why they're choosing to do it, externally. So I think one of the other questions that people have about content outsourcing, that people are, I think, really curious about before we get back into this, the statistics and some of the things you shared in the presentation yesterday, is this question, which is a lot of concern that, I think this was covered in your presentation a bit yesterday as well, which was around, the brand aspect. And I think one of the statistics that you had mentioned is that a reason why people are not outsourcing, I think it was like you had 19.5% or something that said only we can do the storytelling, right? Something like almost 20%. Only we can do the storytelling. So could you address this question? Like, how can companies feel comfortable, Vitaly, with trusting sort of a third-party writer to learn about their brand and do the storytelling for them?
All right, sure. Personally, I think that these days such a notion as brand identity is not just about your website design, the typography you use on your website, your logo, formatting, and many other different visual things. It's also about content. So these days, I would actually complement this notion of brand identity with a content for sure. And if you want to create a strong brand, if you want to establish yourself as an expert in your industry, in your niche, if you want to get, a dedicated community around your brand, you definitely need content for that, right? So that is why when it comes to creating and to outsourcing content for your brand, many companies actually consider right the following factors, the following criteria. They usually take that into account in order to succeed in that, right? So first of all, if you outsource content, right, you must make sure that your content provider kind of feels your brand. Yeah, that your content provider will be able to tell your brand story, to show your product or your service at various angles, right? And that your content provider will be able and will be capable to help you convince your audience that you are a brand, your potential users can trust, right? Second, you should be consistent, right, in doing that, right? Because you know, especially when you outsource to different freelancers or to different writers, authors, you must be sure that you have this consistent brand voice, right? That your blog or your website doesn't look like Frankenstein, completed of completely different and diverse pieces, right? You must ensure this brand consistency, and in order to do that, it's highly advisable for you to create your brand style guide where you can actually outline these aspects. I personally like the example of such a guide with MailChimp. You probably saw that, right? They have this big document where they actually outline what their brand voice is, how it sounds like, what content formats they use, they produce, and so on and so forth. And it can be really helpful not only for your, internal in-house marketing team, but also for any content provider you hire to cover, different content formats.
Yeah, I think this is a really interesting point you're making, which is that essentially when people are worried about the brand and the storytelling of a third party writer, Vitaly, what the point you're making is that there's actually some steps that your company, if you're thinking about outsourcing, there's some steps you can actually take to increase the chance of success. And the first thing you've shared is this idea of having a brand brief or a brand guideline, which could include things like use these phrases, don't use these phrases, speak in this tone, and so on, which I think is great. And you're referencing some good examples. The one, for example, from MailChimp. So if you're listening and you're wondering about can you get writing done through a third party, the critical thing is not just about the third party. The really critical thing that Vitaly's sharing is what you can do to kind of create the highest chance of success, so that if the writer comes in and they have that brand guideline, they can learn a lot more. Now, another thing I think that you've shared as well during your talk, and I think is one of the things that is available on the Semrush content marketplace, is that you let people provide samples of articles that they think are well written. So maybe you could talk a bit about why that's helpful and how that can also answer this question about matching a person's brand and their style, the style that they like in the writing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, sure. I guess, providing some samples, some references is always kind of good for a copywriter, yeah, who writes any kind of content, right? Because it provides you with some kind of foundation that you can base, any other content that you write, right? So, and that is definitely a good point in this whole flow, right? And if you consider outsourcing content, you should definitely, provide freelancers or content writing service with samples, with some samples they can use as an example, yeah, while creating new content for you. Plus, even in case with AI tools, AI-powered content writing tools, this is also kind of an emerging trend in the industry. You can also feed, some references to them. They can analyze the content, scan it, probably see some patterns in it, and it will help with artificial intelligence, to create great content for you. Plus, while addressing this point, I would also like to mention that it's really important for you as a person who orders content from third party, yeah, to understand what kind of content you need for your audience, right? You need to listen to your audience, probably even survey them, and to have this, customer-centric approach here. Because if you order some content that your audience doesn't really want to get, for example, they need educational videos and you provide them, with infographics or with some long reads they don't feel like reading, right? So you may end up in a situation where the content you outsource, no matter to who you outsource it, and no matter how good that content is, it won't resonate with your audience at all, right? That is why, yeah, answering your question, content samples are important. You should definitely consider them when outsourcing content to some content partners. But also, in addition to that, you really need to run some research on your end and to understand what kind of content your audience really needs and what may resonate with them. So if you connect all these dots, you're kind of doomed to succeed. And no matter where you produce content, either in-house or with your content provider, so you will succeed.
I think that's great. That's really helpful to have. The idea that a lot of times I think when people outsource, the reason it doesn't work, Vitaly, as you're sharing, is that they just kind of expect it to magically, they're going to just send over one sentence and all of a sudden they're going to get back the perfect thing. And then when they don't get it back, they just think, oh, this doesn't work. And what they don't realize is when they're doing it in-house, they're actually following a much stricter set of procedures. When they outsource it, they kind of think it's going to be magical. They don't have to have those same procedures. And I think it's great that you're even taking it to the next level. You're saying you need a brand guideline so far. You say, we also haven't talked so much about a content brief, but you mentioned it briefly, no pun intended. And then the third thing you said was that, survey your customers. So I think we can talk more about the content brief a little bit. You definitely spoke about it during your talk. But I think people are, or if there's something else that came up for you, we can also discuss that first. It's something you were raising your hand. Did something come up for you when I was saying about?
I actually wanted to talk about content briefing as well. So.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
So go ahead.
Yeah. So when it comes to
exactly is a content brief, and I guess the big question around content briefs is, people might be scared to put a content brief together. So, what are the main things that minimally should be included in a content brief?
In case with Semrush Content Marketplace, we actually request you just to share an idea of your topic, and probably some of your keywords, But even if you don't provide keywords, it's okay. We can perform, keyword research on our end, right? But yeah, as you mentioned, for some people who are inexperienced in content marketing, some extended briefs, with multiple fields to fill out, they may actually scare them away, right? So they may be the blocker for them to even complete the brief, right? That is why when it comes to content briefing approach, I would, make some fields kind of mandatory and required. For example, you can't but, provide us with content topic, right? Because without that, we won't be able to even write anything, right? Plus, keywords are also a desirable point to add here, right? Because it will help us to understand what keywords are important for you, what keywords you use to shape your website's semantic core. And this is why having these aspects are kind of mandatory. They are required 100%. As for the other things, like, for example, if you want to align, this content with your tone of voice with the other content that you have on your website or blog, you can definitely share some samples of that, for the copywriters to know the direction where they should move, right? So for them to know what kind of language, what kind of style they're better to use, right, to deliver the content that you may really need, right? Plus, providing some extra aspects like, for example, as I mentioned, tone of voice, um, the style used on your website, maybe also helpful for any copywriter, for any freelancer, or for any content writing service to complete your brief. But again, there should be some kind of golden medium here, right? So the briefs, they shouldn't be really overwhelming. They shouldn't contain, tons of different fields you are supposed to fill out in order, to get the content you need. There definitely should be some mandatory fields, right, that are kind of really necessary for a writer to understand what content you need. And if you want to, add some specific aspects to it, right, so you can definitely name and outline them in those extra fields.
Yeah, so I
So
think the critical thing you're saying for a content brief is to start simple.
yeah,
And
exactly.
really, maybe the critical thing in the content brief is, who you're writing for, right? Like who's the reader, and the tone you want it to be. And this is something I like about the content marketplace at Semrush, is that you can choose enthusiastic or neutral, and or other tones as well. And the tone of voice is important. The audience that you're writing for is important, and then some samples I think are also important. And as you said in the brief, there's a section around any specific things you want covered, like keywords or even questions, right? So I think that's great, and people can get better at it. You could start with a basic brief, submit it, and then the next time improve it. So it doesn't have to be just a one shot that you're going to get it perfectly done. Um, so I think the content brief and the brand guidelines, people might be confused about the difference between the two of them. So maybe you could just quickly explain like the difference between brand guidelines and content brief. Many people will already know the difference, but for submitting content for outsourcing, what would you say is the critical? What would you keep in the brand guideline, and what would you put in the content brief?
Well, sure. Yeah, the brand guidelines is something really global. It's something about, your company mission, how you actually help your customers and what way you help them. It's about your voice, yeah, how you sound to your potential users, how you sound to your potential customers. And probably these aspects, a copywriter should be aware of them. Yeah, he or she, they should know, what your company mission is, uh, how you actually address your customer pain points, needs, and requirements. So they should definitely know this background information, right? But they should know it at a very, very high level, probably without getting too much into detail. Yeah. As for content brief, I would say it centers mostly around, the structure you want to see for your content piece, the style, tone of voice, and the ASO part. I mean, the keywords and the things that are connected with them, right? So that is why we should clearly differentiate these two things, not to mix them together, right? Again, in my opinion, for a copywriter or for a content writing service, it's important to know what your company is about, but again, without getting too much and too deep into the detail, right? Because for content briefs, you definitely need to know this technical side of things regarding your copy, SEO side of things regarding your copy, and that is more than enough, in my opinion, just to create an outstanding content base.
Okay, so the question, that was a really, I think, helpful clarification. You can reuse your brand guidelines for many different articles, and your content brief will be essentially usually unique to each article. So the next question is a really interesting one, which is, let me just make sure I get it typed into the little window here. So the question is, what if the article I received isn't exactly what I wanted? How can I give feedback to the writer and ask for revisions?
Mhm. I guess, it's an indispensable part of the process. I'm talking about revisions because, hardly any is happy. Yeah, hardly anyone can be happy with the first version of the copy you deliver. Yeah, even if it's a perfect copy, they may anyway have, some suggestions, some corrections, because, they may see this copy in a different light, and it goes without saying that we should, take all their suggestions, all their requirements into account as well, right? Um, Asking for feedback is a really important part of this whole process, right? In Semrush Content Marketplace, we kind of offer multiple revisions with every content piece we deliver. It actually depends whether you have a premium plan or a free plan. So with a free plan, you can have 3 revisions for your content, right? So with the premium plan, we can kind of polish it until you're finally happy with that, right? But it's kind of important here to outline the whole flow, yeah, to a user or to the person who orders your content right from the very start. Because if you completely comply with the brief, if you follow each and every point a user had for you, right? And if they come back and say, okay, I want a completely different copy, right? You should definitely be able to negotiate that and to convince a user that, you followed each and every point on the brief. Everything is perfectly written, structured, and delivered to you on time. If you want something different, okay, let's negotiate it, but it's going probably to be a completely different copy. So that is why, in this case, it's really important to listen to your users, to listen to their requirements, because they may really vary even during the process, right? So, and it's extremely important to take everything that into account in order to deliver the best copy for them.
Yeah, I think one of the things that you might be also sharing is that when you see that you need to give feedback, maybe you can go back and update your content brief as well, so that way you can say, okay, well, these are the things that this time the writer missed. Let me add them in the brief, so that then it could be part 2 of the brief or something, so that people who are going to write the next article can benefit from that. But in terms of feedback, generally, do you just suggest that they put comments like in a Google document, or what is the actual process for giving feedback on an article, or should they record a video, or what is the best practice on that?
Yeah, so it depends on who you work with. Yeah, I know with freelancers, they usually, put comments, as you mentioned, in a Google Doc, and they just, discuss what should be corrected, what should be polished. It's quite a normal practice. With solutions like, for example, Semrush Content Marketplace, we have a built-in feature, so you can, make comments within the software, within the interface. Probably it's more convenient, right? But again, the mechanisms to collect feedback may be really various. So the most important thing here, in my understanding, is how you handle those, right? How you address those, because customers may have their own vision, and that vision may be actually against some good common practices, and then you need to actually explain to the customer, okay, probably we shouldn't touch this part of the content because it is properly optimized, it reveals the topic, it is well written and structured. So we can, take your suggestions into account, but it should be that way, right? So, and it will be good for you in order to achieve your business goals, your content marketing goals, right? So that is why it's a kind of a two-way road here, two-way street. So you need to listen to your customers on the one hand. On the other hand, you should also kind of convince and explain to them that these are the best content writing practices, and probably we should, go here, this or that way, right?
So in terms of feedback, it's actually done inside of the software, right? People can make the suggestions right in there, which is good for everybody, because you're able to, as a team, see the kinds of changes that are being asked and track how many changes are being requested for different writers and things like that. So that's great. So one of the questions that has come up, and just maybe you could address it, like, should people be able to, should they expect to chat with the writer, and is that necessary? And if so, is it possible?
Okay, it's a very good question, by the way. Yeah, because as I said at the beginning, so the model how marketplace works is actually the following. We created a pool of diverse content talent. We partnered up with leading content providers. And when somebody comes to us and asks for a specific content piece written in a specific style, right, we instantly match those with a certain writer. Yes, the writers that will be best for handling that specific content need, right? And of course, you can influence the work this writer delivers you content, right? You can communicate your requirements, your specific needs to them, right? But in content marketplace, we don't have this kind of direct connection between a writer and the one who actually orders content, mostly because to save time, right? Because when you have this direct communication, right? So you may actually end up, in a long process of, back and forth talks, right? And our support specialists, they are well-trained people. They help, to address any concerns, any particular aspects regarding, content that you may have, right? And we try to do that the shortest time possible, right? So that is why, in order to minimize this back and forth communication and to streamline this whole process, we don't have this direct communication with the writer. But on the other hand, we deliver your content really fast, so that you can meet your deadlines, every time with no delays at all. And on the other hand, we listen to all your requirements, all your requests, and we just hand them into that writer, right? But as for this mechanism of direct communication, so in Marketplace, we don't have that.
Okay. So your point is really that, in a sense, chat can almost lead people down the wrong path because it kind of uses up a lot of time for both the person who's creating the order and the person who's doing the work. And really, it's better to learn how to create better content briefs and create, better, a better process. And that's what you're really trying to help people to learn, is create a better process, have the right pillars in place, the right foundation, and you shouldn't really need to be chasing your writer with like ongoing back and forth throughout the process. And that can oftentimes really use up a lot of your time as somebody who needs content done, and also the writer, and almost create bad habits where the writer starts to expect that they're just going to ask you questions in the middle of the project. Which I think, that is another one that might be something people are wondering, like, what if the writer has questions for me? So maybe you could just, is that something that people should worry about, or is that something that is you think that's already taken care of in the brief process?
Yeah, I would say that it's really important for a writer as well. Probably, something maybe unclear on your brief, right? And a writer may need some clarification. And in this case, we have customer support that actually collects that feedback. And if something is not, on the brief, if you, for example, I don't know, forgot to mention keywords or forget to provide some reference, and it's really vital for a writer to understand, right, in order to complete that copy the best way possible. So in this case, we have this communication via our customer support team, and they definitely find that out, right, with you if you order content. So no issues here.
Okay, great. So there is room for clarification if needed, and there's a customer support team involved. Okay, so this question also, I think a lot of people are curious about, which is sort of speed and also getting updates to know that it's in progress. So what if people do content outsourcing and they do it, say, on Semrush content marketplace, when would they essentially know that it's being worked on, and so on?
Yeah. Okay. In this case, it depends on the content type you order with Content Marketplace, right? For example, short content forms, they take less time. It's kind of goes without saying. So when you submit, for example, a topic, you will be able to get, the title, for example, for your article in a couple of days. And again, you will get the first draft of your copy. I actually don't remember the exact number of dates, so you may go to our website and have a look at that. But it doesn't take really long to deliver that content. But when, for example, you order an ebook, which is a huge content format consisting of some chunks, right, some chapters probably. It may take longer time for us, not only for us, for everybody actually to complete that. So it may take up to 3-4 weeks, right? Mostly because of the complexity of this content. But yeah, addressing this question, you will get the title of any content you order with us just in a couple of days. So the delivery time depends on how big that content is. For articles, for emails, it takes actually less time. For big content formats like ebooks or infographic, yeah, it may take up to 2-3 weeks or something.
Wow. Okay. So the good thing that I think you're sharing is that they'll get some feedback that it's in progress, and they'll get possibly a title, something that they know that work's being done. There are a couple of questions around sort of content ownership So let's just cover those really quickly. So if somebody is writing the content themselves, then clearly they own it, right? If they have, say, an employee that they're paying, then that's between the company and the employee how they structure that, who owns it. But normally the company has agreement that they own it. So when content is outsourced to a third party, I guess the question some people have is the content fully owned by the person who's, after it's delivered by the company, or is the writer, maybe can the writer try to reuse it with another client?
Okay. Yeah, globally, it depends actually on the content provider you collaborate with, right? If it's a reputable author or some, famous copywriter, so they may claim, the ownership of the content, and you may be supposed, to mention them, link to them on your website or blog, right? So it's quite a normal practice, and, a lot of writers, they really deserve it. They deserve to be mentioned as, as the creators of that content. In case with content marketplaces, with freelancers probably, and with AI tools, from what I know, the vast majority of them, they don't claim ownership of that content, right? For example, in case with content marketplace, you just own the content we deliver. Yeah, you're not supposed to mention us, or the content is completely white label, so you can use it for various purposes, post it anywhere you like, right? So, and actually that is the beauty of it, right? So on the one hand, we don't connect you with a writer, right? On the other hand, you don't have this obligation actually to mention that writer. So that is why this process works better this way, and I guess businesses can really derive some benefits from it.
Yeah. So the bottom line is that there are some few cases where you're saying it could even be an advantage to the company to mention the writer, because the writer has credentials that make the article more valuable. But you're saying for Semrush content marketplace, the standard is that the company just owns it. It's completely white labeled, so the content would not be reused anywhere else, and that's important. I think people have questions about that. And the next question is also somewhat related, which is there a process that they can know that the writing is unique and not copied from somewhere?
Yeah, sure. 100% in case with content marketplace, we check every content piece we deliver, no matter how big or small it is, be it an email copy or uh, an ebook consistent of some topics here or an article. We check it for plagiarism. We kind of make sure 100% that the content is unique, so that you won't have any issues, with Google because of this content duplication. So we kind of guarantee that, and there is official statement on our website that each piece of content we deliver is 100% unique and plagiarism-free.
Okay, awesome. So that's an easy one, right? The next question is about just getting content done, especially bigger, longer form content. It's a little bit of a strange question, but I think the question is, if I have longer form content, should I submit several smaller orders or one big order? And is there a way to get milestones?
Yeah, you basically submit one brief. A single brief is enough, right? You outline, everything you want to get in your ebook, right? So what each chapter should be about, probably some references, probably some research results, everything that we actually should include into that ebook, right? As for milestones, frankly speaking, I need to double check on that. But from what I remember, there are some updates on that, right? So you will be updated on delivering, for example, each chapter. Yeah, if your book consists, for example, of 5 chapters, and you'll be able to discuss the results, to see them, and to provide any feedback and corrections if required, right? So that is kind of working that way.
Okay, I think that's helpful. So you're saying just do one brief, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So the next question is around quality, just really quickly. So I think you mentioned this briefly in your talk, but there were some questions like, what is the role of, is there an editor involved? And if so, what do they do during, if I say submit it to the content marketplace?
Yeah, on the side of our content providers, there are definitely editors. So it kind of goes without saying. It's a natural part of the process, I believe, right? So yeah, each piece of content, their copywriters deliver. Um, it has been checked, against various criteria. Yeah, as I said, it should be plagiarism free. The content should be unique. The content should be SEO optimized, especially if you provide the keywords. Really make sure that the keywords are in there, that the main content elements are fully optimized for those keywords, and that you'll get the best copy possible, right? So that is why, yeah, we kind of ensure that each and every piece of content we deliver is proofread, is checked against, your guidelines, right? So if you mention, for example, your tone of voice, or how you want to see the content, we kind of make sure that it is in there.
Okay, so the editor is involved, and it's a really critical part, is what you're saying. And the editor is really going to go through the article and compare it to the brief, and essentially
Mhm.
save time for the people who are ordering, so they don't have to do that themselves. So really, by the time you're receiving your order, it's already been checked against the brief by somebody who has a fair amount of experience. That's
Mhm.
pretty cool. I think that's really great, and
Yeah,
it's
as I
nice
as
to.
I Yeah, as I said, so our task, when creating content marketplace within Semrush was actually to completely simplify the process for a user, right? For them not to care about, the organizational side of the process. I mean, writers, search, onboarding them, educating them, and actually, signing different contracts. So we also try to simplify the briefs. Yeah, if you want to go with an extended version of the brief, feel free to do that. We will take everything that you mentioned into account. If you just want to, for example, outline the topic in a couple of keywords, it's also okay for us, to start working on the content. And of course, when it comes to content delivery and to checking, the quality of the content, it's probably the most crucial part of the process. And we definitely have systems in place that make sure that the content is plagiarism free, that it is unique, that it's optimized for your keywords, and well written and fully aligned with your content brief.
Okay, so this next question is just kind of like a little bit of a detailed one, but if somebody has already created a brand guideline and content brief, is there a way for them to include those, or do they have to recreate them inside of your system?
No, there is a separate field for that in our briefs. So you can just copy paste the whole thing or just attach a file to us and we will try to take everything into account.
Okay, cool. So they can reuse the ones that they already have if they have some
Yeah, yeah.
already.
Why not?
So going back to the survey, some of the surprising results, we'll bounce back and forth a little bit, but go back to
Yeah.
the research you did. First of all, thanks for sharing so much about the process. I think having you talk through these questions is really helpful because a lot of people probably want to ask, they're curious about it, and this kind of alleviates a lot of their concern and fears. Maybe
Mhm.
they don't realize that, it's that a lot of these things have been thought through. Um,
Yeah.
so one of
As
the
I
things
said,
you, yeah,
yeah, as I said, sorry. Yeah. So basically, the biggest concern when you outsource content to some third party, to some content provider, is actually the fear of sharing this responsibility, right? Because when you have people in-house, when you have your own team, you know how to manage them. Strong and weak sides of each copywriter you have on your team, right? And when you outsource content to somebody else, you have concerns about how professional, how capable those writers can be, right? You have fears about how they deliver your content, whether it will be aligned with your brand voice, with your brand lines, and so on and so forth, right? But usually those fears like fade away when you receive your first draft, when you receive your first copy. You say, okay, so it's really okay to share that responsibility with somebody else, and probably I will continue practices then in the future because my team may be either overloaded with some tasks, or I may not have content people on my team at all, right? So that is why content outsourcing is a good thing, and there are some probably prejudices, there are some fears and concerns about it, but when you just received the first draft of the content, those fears and concerns, they just fade away.
yeah, the point you're saying, I think, is give it a shot, because if you can
Yeah.
work this part of your content system out, then it really allows your business to grow. And there's a lot of process and steps involved to help make it better. So one of the questions that also is coming up is are there some subjects like, for example, knitting, or maybe somebody has an article, has a blog about, say,
Mhm.
political action around the environment, or political action around free speech, or something like that.
Mhm.
Are those types of subjects, like very specific types of subjects, scientific subjects, political subjects, hobbies, are those things
Mhm.
that can be requested, or is it more kind of general topics?
Mm-hmm. Actually, no, questions like that are most frequently asked question, among our support team. So they often get requests from our potential users, whether you guys can deliver content about, politics or, slavery or sexual assault or something really specific and probably even taboo. So in this case, I would say that we have terms of service, right? So most of those topics, the topics that we can actually cover, as I mentioned there. But again, it is discussed individually, right? So
Yeah,
you see
I
that the
think
topic,
here it's more like things like horseback riding,
yeah,
or
yeah,
somebody who is very into like a certain type of gardening. Let's say they have a blog for
yeah,
um,
those one, yeah, those
gardening.
ones. Yeah, those ones we can cover for sure. So no issues with that, like at all. So, but yeah, as for some specific topics, I do believe it's negotiable, right? You can discuss it with our customer support service. But we cover the vast majority of any popular topics out there.
I see, and even things like somebody has a science like company and they want to have a writer work on articles around like a new kind of DNA testing or something. That's also okay.
Yeah.
Oh, great. Okay, that's pretty interesting. I think because a lot of times when people think about content outsourcing, I think one of the fears that we've been hearing throughout the event, as we brought up content outsourcing after your talk, especially, is Vitaly is around. It won't work for me, because my subject is too specific, and so this is something I really wanted you to address. But it sounds
All
like
right.
it's gonna work, right? So that's your point. Okay. So back to the research really quickly for the last few minutes.
All right.
There were a few things that were really interesting in the research, and one of the things was the budgets that people spend on content outsourcing. And I think this is a way to kind of know that people see this as something that works because they're spending real money and they're spending it on an ongoing basis.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm looking at the slide on the budgets. I have it open, and it says something like 12% spend more than 6,000, 8% spend more than 11,000. So that's almost 20%, just combining 6 and the 12 category. And then the another 5% are spending more than 30,000. So if you add up 6,000, greater than 6,000, it's almost 25%. That's a lot of people spending more than $6,000 a month
Yeah.
that you surveyed. Was that a surprise to you that people are spending that much money on content outsourcing?
Uh, yeah, in a way. So yes and no. Yeah. On the one hand, we were pretty surprised when we received those results, right? Because we actually expected that people don't spend that much on content outsourcing, right? But on the other hand, when we discussed these quite sensitive questions with the representatives of those big brands, yeah, they said that when you hire a person in-house, when you hire a copywriter for your in-house team, to pay salary. So no matter whether you have task for this person or not, you have to pay some social fees, right? So at the end of the day, so your expenses, your marketing expenses for content production may actually be bigger in comparison with content outsourcing. When you just outsource content, you pay for a content piece that is delivered to you, and that's it. Yeah. So the majority of content providers, they don't buy you with with contracts, with obligations and stuff like that. Basically, if you want article, you just come and order article and you're done, right? So that is why content outsourcing is definitely cheaper than maintaining your own team, and that is why um, that is actually the reason why the companies who also have their own in-house content teams, they also practice this hybrid model, right? For example, they produce some important content pieces, like, for example, company presentations or product descriptions, or the homepage of your website internally, right? Because your team knows your product or service best, right? So they know how to describe it the best way possible, right? But when it comes to blog content, when it comes to, for example, infographic based on that blog content, right? So these content pieces, these content types usually get outsourced because it is cheaper, it is faster, and you don't need to hire extra people, in-house in order to get them delivered, right? So that.
I think the critical thing that you're sharing is that there are a lot of people who are really investing in outsourcing, but it doesn't mean that they have to outsource everything. They can actually be strategic.
Exactly.
For a really important sales page or landing page, they might do it internally. But if they have 100 products, they want product descriptions written, that might be something they're willing to outsource and get it done by somebody who understands that product category. That's great. So I think if you have any sort of final thoughts about if people are curious about content outsourcing, and based on the kind of questions you've been getting today, I guess the final thing that maybe you could share, there's some quotes here that you had mentioned, right? One was from Brooklyn Nash, from the head of content at Sales Hacker, and he said, "High traffic numbers are less important to me. How many people are engaging with the content once it's there, especially because we are tied to a community. So if people are spending some time on the article and then converting into a community and engaging the community because of the original article, that's a success." I'd love to get, you said this is one of those, there's like several quotes. I would like to go through them and just kind of get your take on why, what you thought when you heard that quote from Brooklyn Nash from Sales Hacker about engagement and community being. This is kind of speaking to a little bit like the value, right? Where we were in your presentation yesterday, you mentioned that you were a little bit surprised when we went through it that not everybody is thinking just purely in terms of ROI. And this is like Brooklyn is really speaking to that, right? He's saying like it can be like just producing value and engagement and creating that connectedness, and in his case, growing the community. So what were your thoughts when you saw like different ways that people are thinking about getting value, not just only ROI?
Yeah. A surprising thing for me when I was doing actually all those interviews and the survey itself was that people may absolutely different goals, with content, right? So they may use content, just as you mentioned, to build a community around their brand, right? And in this way, they care more about the value this content deliver, the values that actually helps them as a brand to establish their, authority, their power within some certain niche, right? Some people care more about the numbers. They want content to bring them, more traffic, right? And if content ranks well, if it generates, a big share of the organic traffic for them, they're absolutely happy, right? I would say that those cases, and not only these cases, but many other goals are good, right? It mostly depends on your business model, on what you want to achieve and what marketing strategy you have, right? If you want just to increase an organic share with the traffic, with the help of content, just go produce the content, optimize it for the right keywords, do a lots of other, SEO related things, and just succeed in that, right? If you want to build a community, a dedicated community and following around your brand, then you probably shouldn't care about keywords that much, you should care about how in-depth your content is, how it covers specific topics that may resonate potentially with your audience, right? That is why, no matter what goals you have, content will help you achieve them anyway, right? And that is why, in the modern digital marketing world, probably content is one of the pillars you cannot go without, right?
Awesome. That's a great kind of sort of point for us to kind of wrap up the live panel today. We covered a lot of ground. We talked about number one, the process, how to get it, set up in terms of a brand guideline, and then also a content brief. We talked about the review and feedback process. We talked about making sure content's unique and that, the ownership of the content. We talked a bit also about timing and what you can expect, how to give feedback. So it was a really very thorough live panel discussion with Vitaly, and I really appreciate having you here and sharing your thoughts and your process with the audience. So thanks so much, Vitaly. It's been really great.
Yeah, the pleasure is all mine. Thanks for having me, Jay.
So for everyone who's listening, let us know. We're going to have links to the presentation, also to the talk. The talk is available. You should be able to watch it for free. It's available usually 24 hours from the day it goes live, so it should still be available now. So grab it, go in there and watch it, and let us know what you think. And we'll be having Vitaly back to talk more about best practices for content outsourcing. And I just want to say thank you to Vitaly and his team as well at Semrush for doing all that hard work and putting all the time into creating such a great research report. And there'll be a link to that research report, sending out all those surveys. And we'll end the note by saying, Vitaly, stay warm in St. Petersburg, Russia, and have a wonderful rest of the day. Okay, see you everybody, and we'll see you at the next live panel talk coming up tomorrow. There's a full day of talks every day during the summit. So this is day 2. So a very full day today. Speakers from Semrush, as you saw with Vitaly. We've got speakers from Salesforce, Thrive Themes, Elementor, lots of great companies all around the world. So look forward to getting your feedback as well. See you guys in the next live panel. And thanks again, Vitaly.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Let me quickly